Have you ever just stopped in the middle of the day and realized how tired you are? Not tired from working, tired from thinking, tired from carrying something nobody asked you to carry. I'm not talking about the obvious control stuff, the person who micromanages, who always has to be right, who has to run the meeting. That's easy to spot. I'm talking about the quiet version. The version where you're lying in bed at 11 p.m. and your body is still, but your mind is still going, still problem solving, still running scenarios. What if this falls through? What if they didn't mean it that way? What if I'm not prepared enough? And you tell yourself, this is just being responsible. This is what adults do. And maybe it is. Maybe life taught you early that if you don't think ahead, nobody will. Maybe you've been burned before, so you plan, you double check. You stay one step ahead of everything, because falling behind felt too dangerous. But here's what I want to ask you tonight. At what point did planning turn into fear? At what point did being responsible become a weight God never actually put on your shoulders? Because there's a difference between wisdom and white-knuckling your way through life. And a lot of us have been white-knuckling it for years, and we've been calling it faith. That's where Exodus 16 finds us. Not in some perfect, peaceful moment, in the wilderness, after the Red Sea, after the chains broke, after the miracle. These people watched God split water with their own eyes, and now hunger shows up and they lose it. They start talking about Egypt like it was a vacation. At least we had food back there where they were slaves. And before we go, how could they forget that fast? Let's be honest. We do the same thing. God comes through on Monday. By Thursday, we're already anxious about next week. God says, I'll provide, and somewhere in the back of our heads, we're thinking, yeah, but just in case. So tonight, this isn't really a story about ancient Israel and bread falling from the sky. This is a story about you, the person who's exhausted from trying to hold everything together, the person who wants to trust God, genuinely wants to, but can't quite unclench. And I don't think God is here to shame you for that. I think he's here because he's been watching you carry that, and he wants to show you another way. Part 1. Sometimes control is what fear does when it cannot pray. Before we get into the text, I want to say something first. Be gentle with yourself on this one. Because most people who struggle with control, they're not difficult people. They're not sitting there thinking, I want to make everyone around me miserable. That's not what's happening. What's happening is fear. That voice that says, what if this doesn't work out? What if they leave? What if I trust God and he doesn't move fast enough? And when that voice stays long enough, your heart starts looking for something to grab onto. Something solid, something you can manage. That's the setup for Exodus 6. Israel is out of Egypt. That's done. Pharaoh's gone. The Red Sea's behind them. They're free. But now they're hungry. And hunger has a way of making fear get loud real fast. So they start grumbling. And what do they say? Basically, at least in Egypt we had food. At least back there we knew what we were getting. Now think about that for a second. Egypt, where they were slaves, where they cried out to God because life was unbearable. That Egypt. And now fear is looking back at it like it was something worth returning to. That's what fear does to memory. It edits things. It takes old pain and goes, yeah, but at least it was familiar. At least you knew what to expect. Fear will make a prison look like a plan, and I think a lot of us know that feeling, maybe more than we want to admit. Admit the dad who says he trusts God with his kids, but he can't stop hovering. Can't stop warning, pushing, calling, and it's not because he's controlling, it's because somewhere underneath that he's terrified. Love and fear got tangled up, and now he doesn't know how to let go without feeling like he failed them. Or the person who can't put down their phone. One short reply, and the heart sinks. 3 hours of silence, and the mind is already building a case. They're pulling away. Something's wrong. Did I say something? And it's not about the phone. It's about needing to know they're okay, needing certainty. Or the person who checks their account. Again. Not because they're obsessed with money, but because they remember what it felt like when there wasn't enough. And that memory doesn't leave easy. This is why control is so exhausting. Because it's not really about control. It's about fear trying to do the job that prayer was supposed to do. Instead of, Lord, I'm scared, we say, let me check one more time. Instead of, Lord, I don't know how this is going to work, we say, let me figure this out myself. Israel wasn't just hungry for bread. They were hungry for certainty. They wanted to know, is God still going to be there tomorrow? Or is this the day he stops showing up? And maybe that's the real question underneath all the controlling. Not can I manage this situation, but do I actually believe God is going to come through? Here's what I love about Exodus 16 though. God doesn't answer them with a lecture. He doesn't say, after everything I've done for you, you still don't trust me. He just gives them bread. Bread on the ground. Every morning. Enough for today. Mercy before the lesson. And maybe that's where this starts for us too. Not with getting it all figured out, but with just being honest. Lord, I'm not doing this because I'm strong. I'm doing this because I'm scared. And I need you to teach me how to trust you again. That's not weakness. That's actually the beginning of something. Part 2. Egypt can leave your life before it leaves your imagination. Here's something strange about the human heart. Sometimes we don't actually miss the thing. We miss knowing what to expect. Israel wasn't really missing Egypt. Not the real one. Not the forced labor. Not the beatings. Not the years of being treated like they didn't matter. They weren't missing that. They were missing the predictability. Because even pain can feel like safety when you've learned how to survive it. You know the rhythms. You know when things are about to get bad. You know what version of yourself to become to get through it. And there's something in us, something deeply human, that would rather have a familiar hard thing than an unfamiliar good thing. That's why you can leave a bad relationship and still reach for your phone at 2 a.m. Not because it was good, but because you knew how it worked. Freedom is strange that way. We think it's going to feel like a song, and sometimes it does for a while. But then the song ends, and you look around, and there's no plan, no backup system, no roadmap, just open space. And for someone who's spent years surviving by staying in control, open space doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like exposure. That's the wilderness. Israel's bodies walked out of Egypt in a single night. But Egypt had been shaping the way they thought for generations. Safety meant food you could see, walls you could touch, a system you understood, a tomorrow you could at least predict, even if it was hard. So when hunger hit, their minds went back. They didn't go back because Egypt was good. They went back because the wilderness asked something Egypt never asked of them: trust. And maybe that's the honest answer to a question a lot of us have asked. Why do I keep going back to something God already brought me out of? Why do I miss what I know wasn't good for me? It might not be because you're hopeless. It might be because Egypt trained you deeply over a long time. It trained you to believe that rest is a risk, that if you stop watching, something bad will sneak up on you. That safety has to be built by your own hands, or it won't hold. So God brings them into the wilderness, and he's not just changing where they live. He's working on how they think. He's trying to teach them that safe and familiar are not the same thing, that a prison you've gotten used to is still a prison. And maybe he's doing something like that in you too. Maybe he already removed the thing, but the voice of it is still in your head, still telling you that you're not safe unless you have it figured out. Still whispering, go back, at least you knew how to survive there. He's patient with that. He knows that kind of rewiring takes time. So he doesn't lecture them, he just puts bread on the ground. Morning by morning, a different kind of safety. Not a system, not a plan, not Egypt. Just him, showing up again. Part 3, God gave manna, but they wanted a warehouse. So God hears them, he sees the fear, and he provides. But notice what he doesn't give them. He doesn't give them a farm. He doesn't set up a supply chain. He doesn't hand Moses a spreadsheet with every meal for the next 40 years. He gives them bread for one day. That's it. Tomorrow you come back and get tomorrow's. And they looked at it and said, what is it? That's actually what manna means. What is it? They didn't even have a name for it because they'd never seen anything like it before. I think about that. God's provision showed up in a form they didn't recognize, didn't fit any category they had. They couldn't store it, couldn't predict it, couldn't build a system around it. They just had to pick it up and eat it, and trust that tomorrow there'd be more. That is genuinely hard for a person who spent their whole life trying to stay in control, because fear doesn't just want provision. Fear wants a warehouse. Fear wants to open a door and see it stacked up, accounted for, enough for every scenario you've already run in your head at 3 a.m. Enough to cover the medical bill you haven't gotten yet, the conversation that might go wrong, the job that might not last. And God keeps saying, here's today's bread. And we keep saying, but what about next month? Think about someone sitting at the kitchen table late at night. House is quiet, kids are in bed, spouse is asleep, and they're just sitting there with a pile of papers, bills, maybe some medical stuff, work pressure they haven't told anyone about, and they're not being faithless. They're just trying to make sure nothing falls apart, trying to think far enough ahead that they catch every problem before it catches them. But here's the thing. No one was built to carry a whole future at once. That's not what we were designed for. That's why Jesus taught us to pray, give us this day our daily bread. Not yearly bread, not enough to stop worrying forever. Just today. Because tomorrow's grace isn't given today. God doesn't hand it out early. He meets you with it when you get there. But fear does the opposite. Fear drags tomorrow into today, makes you carry conversations that haven't happened, losses that may never come, problems God hasn't asked you to touch yet. And then you sit there exhausted and you don't even know why, because nothing technically happened today. It's the weight of what might happen. That's what's crushing you. So the question isn't really, will God show me the whole plan? It probably won't come all at once. It didn't for them either. The question is, can you pick up what he's already put on the ground this morning? Because sometimes the miracle isn't that the wilderness ends. Sometimes the miracle is just that there's bread here, in a place where there shouldn't be any. And faith starts there. Not with everything resolved, not with the warehouse full. Just, there's enough for today. And he was here this morning. And maybe that's enough to take the next step. Part 4. Fear always asks for more than grace. Told you to carry, but some of them kept extra. And honestly, I get it. I really do. If you've ever been without, you don't easily trust that breakfast will still be there tomorrow. When life has knocked you down before, peace starts to feel suspicious, like it's too quiet, like something's about to go wrong. So they looked at the manna, and they thought, yeah, God showed up today. But what about tomorrow? That question is still with us. It just sounds different now. What if the money runs out? What if they leave? What if I trust God and he doesn't come through in time? So they took more than they were told to take. Not out of greed, out of fear. And by morning, it had spoiled. Worms, smell, gone. Here's what I think that detail is trying to tell us. Whatever we gather from fear eventually starts to rot inside us. The extra checking, the replaying conversations at midnight, the managing everyone's mood so nothing goes sideways. At first it feels like you're just being careful, being responsible. But give it enough time and it stops feeling like wisdom. It starts feeling like a weight you can't put down. A marriage can start to carry that smell when one person is always bracing for impact, always watching, always adjusting, never quite letting things just be okay. A home gets heavy when one fearful heart is trying to hold everything together by sheer force of will. And your own soul gets heavy when you're storing yesterday's panic and tomorrow's dread in the same room and wondering why you can't sleep. Fear is a terrible savior. It promises safety and delivers exhaustion. And maybe God let the manna spoil because he loved them too much to let them keep believing fear could actually feed them. Sometimes the plan failing is the mercy. The checking didn't bring peace. The overthinking didn't protect you. The backup plan got heavier than the original problem. So maybe tonight it's just hands open. Lord, I've been carrying what you never asked me to carry. Teach me to leave tomorrow's manna on the ground. Part 5. The worms in the manna were a mercy, Now I want to stay on this a little longer, because I think we can miss something if we move past it too fast. The manna spoiled. Worms, smell, and our first instinct reading that is punishment. Like God is saying, you didn't trust me, so here's what you get. But I don't think that's what's happening. I think God was letting them see what fear actually produces when you hold on to it long enough. Because fear always sounds reasonable at first. It sounds like wisdom. It sounds like the mature thing. Just keep a little extra. Just stay alert. Don't let your guard down. And you think you're protecting yourself, but leave it long enough and it starts changing things around you. The atmosphere in the house shifts and you can't explain why. A simple silence that used to be comfortable now feels loaded. You start reading into things, waiting for something to go wrong, and slowly the thing you kept to protect yourself starts costing you more than what you were afraid of losing. That's why the worms were mercy. God wasn't embarrassing them. He was showing them what they were actually trusting before it had time to become their master. It's like a father who finds his kid hiding food under the bed. And the kid says, "I saved it because I was scared there wouldn't be enough." And the dad doesn't make fun of him, doesn't get angry. He just sits down and says, "Hey, this is gonna make you sick. You don't have to live like this." Maybe God has done something like that with some of your control. Maybe the plan fell apart because the plan had quietly become your peace. Maybe the relationship felt strained because somewhere along the way, love got replaced with management. Maybe the overthinking finally hit a wall because your heart was trying to tell you this isn't working, this isn't saving you. That's not cruelty, that's grace, just not the comfortable kind. Sometimes grace doesn't come as reassurance first, sometimes it comes as exposure. God lets the manna smell so we stop calling fear by the name of wisdom. And if that's where you are tonight, holding something that's already starting to rot, He's not standing over you with disappointment. He's just close, quietly saying, "Open your hand. That thing can't feed you. Come back in the morning and I'll have something for you." That's who He is. He doesn't just give bread. He shows us what can't become bread. And sometimes that's the more important lesson. Part 6, the Sabbath was God teaching them to stop being their own savior. Then God does something unexpected. He doesn't just feed them, He tells them to stop. Day 6, gather twice as much, because tomorrow is the Sabbath. No going out, no gathering, no anxious hands searching the ground just to make sure, just rest. And that sounds beautiful until you realize what He's actually asking of people who spent their whole lives under Pharaoh. Egypt didn't have a Sabbath. Egypt had quotas. You work, you eat, you stop, you suffer. Keep moving or get crushed. That was the only system they'd ever known, and now God is saying, put it down. I'll hold it overnight. For a heart trained by that kind of survival, rest doesn't feel holy, it feels reckless. You know the feeling. You sit down, but your mind keeps standing up. You say you trust God, but your body is still braced, still listening for something to go wrong. Because somewhere deep down, you're not sure the world will stay together if you stop watching it. Some people can't rest not because they're lazy, but because they're scared. But here's what happened. The bread from day 6 didn't rot. But the same manna that spoiled when they hoarded it in fear stayed good when they trusted and stopped. Same bread, different heart. God wasn't just preserving food, He was making a point. Your anxiety is not what's keeping this together. It never was. The Sabbath wasn't a religious rule. It was God saying you are not Pharaoh's property anymore. Your value isn't in your output. Your future isn't being held together by how hard you worry. And maybe that's the invitation tonight. Well, not to stop caring, not to stop loving your family or showing up, but to stop acting like you're the only one standing between your life and disaster. There's a kind of exhaustion that looks like responsibility, but underneath it's just a person who hasn't let God hold anything in a long time. So close the laptop. Let the conversation wait until morning. Let tomorrow stay tomorrow. That's not giving up. That's actually trust with your whole body, not just your words. Conclusion: grace for the person who still reaches for tomorrow. So maybe Exodus 16 isn't really about bread. Maybe it's about tired people slowly learning that God can be trusted. Not all at once, but one morning at a time. Israel didn't figure it out overnight. They kept fearing, kept questioning, kept reaching for more than God told them to take. And honestly, that's probably why this story has stayed in the Bible for thousands of years, because it's true. It sounds like us. Some of us genuinely love God, and we still wake up trying to manage the day before we've even talked to Him. We say we trust Him, but our hands are already tight. Our minds are already in next month. And fear is already asking, but what if tomorrow is different? What if this is the morning he doesn't show up? And then morning came, and there was bread on the ground. Again, not because they finally got it right, not because their faith was clean and steady, but because God is patient with frightened people. That's just who he is. So if that's you tonight, if you're someone who's tired from carrying things God never handed you, that's the word. You don't have to hold the whole future. You weren't built for that, and you were never asked to do it. Just today, just open hands, just enough for this morning. He was here today. He'll be there tomorrow before you arrive. That's enough to rest on.